A very good noon and Jai Hind dear students. Welcome to today's class. We are discussing the chapter The Enemy and continuing with the chapter. Yesterday we have seen that the American prisoner of war, that boy, he thanked Dr. Sadao for saving his life, and to that Dr. Sadao replied that it's quite early to thank him. He should wait. Dr. Sadao also wanted to know about the injury marks which were there on the neck of the boy, but he did not ask the boy about them. Now, let's see. We have to start from here. In the afternoon, the second thing happened. Okay? So, now let us see. In the afternoon, the second thing happened. First thing was leaving of the servant. And the second thing is this: Hannah working hard on unaccustomed labor. Unaccustomed labor means not used to perform hard work. Hannah, she was not used to do the hard labor, as she was having all the servants, so many servants in her house. Okay. Saw a messenger come to the door in official uniform. Her hands went weak and she could not draw her breath. The servants must have told already. She ran to Sadao, gasping, unable to utter a word. Gasping means struggling to breathe, unable to speak. But by then, the messenger had simply followed her through the garden, and there he stood. She pointed at him helplessly. Now see, that day the second incident happened in the afternoon. Hannah was busy with the household work as the servants had left. All of a sudden, she had to perform all the work which she was not used to. She was very tired because of that. She saw that a messenger wearing official uniform, Japanese uniform, had come to the house. As she saw him, her hands went weak and she was unable to breathe. Why? Because she was thinking that those servants who has just left today's morning, might have told everything to the Japanese army, and that's the reason this man is here today. So she was unable to breathe. This was because she felt that the servants must have told the authorities that Dr. Sadao and Hannah, they both were sheltering an enemy. Hannah ran up to Sadao and she was struggling to breathe. She was unable to speak. And what happened? Because she could not speak anything, and by that time, the messenger who was there also followed her through the garden. He also went behind her and he stood in front of Dr. Sadao. So anyways, Hannah also was not been able to inform Dr. Sadao, and he also reached the place where Sadao was. Hannah was totally helpless and she pointed her finger towards the messenger because she could not speak, so she was just pointing towards the messenger. She wanted to tell Dr. Sadao that, see, look, there is a man. Sadao looked up from his book. He was in his office, the other partition of which was thrown open to the garden for the southern sunshine. Southern sunshine means the door of the office which opened into the garden faced the south direction. This means that the sunshine which entered the office was not direct and bright, instead it was a shady sunshine. Okay. So Sadao was reading a book, and when he saw Hannah, he looked up. He was sitting in his office which had a partition in it. The part of the office beyond the partition opened into the garden and was full of shady sunshine. What is it? He asked the messenger, and then he rose, seeing the man's uniform. So Sadao asked the messenger the matter due to which he had visited them. When he saw that the messenger was wearing a uniform, he stood up as a mark of respect as a mark of respect when he saw the uniform, right? "You are to come to the palace," the man said. "The old general is in pain again." The messenger said that Sadao was supposed to accompany him to the palace. He added that the old general was suffering in pain. Old general, you remember, dear students, the same general who stopped Sadao to go to the war front. He stopped him. He said, "Anytime I may need you." The same general. And he was suffering in pain. And Sadao was supposed to visit him and treat him as a doctor. "Oh," Hannah breathed. "Is that all?" "All?" the messenger exclaimed. "Is it not enough?" "Indeed it is," she replied. "I am very sorry." So, what's happening? Hannah was expecting something else. But when she listened that the man has come, that messenger has come because the journal is not feeling well, she was relieved. And she said, "Oh." With this, she took a deep breath and asked that was that all for which the messenger had come? The messenger reacted and said, "All?" He could not understand that what else could it be for which he was supposed to visit the house. उसे समझ ही नहीं आया कि और किस काम के लिए उसे हाउस में आना चाहिए था. He asked that was that not enough? Did they want any other reason for him to visit them? Hannah was sorry for her reaction and said that the reason was enough for the messenger to visit them. She did not need any other reason for him to visit them. When Sadao came to say goodbye, she was in the kitchen but doing nothing. The children were asleep and she sat merely resting for a moment, more exhausted from her fright than from her work. So as Sadao had to accompany the messenger, he went to Hannah to say goodbye. Hannah was in the kitchen, but she was not doing anything. The children had gone to sleep and Hannah was taking rest. She was more tired due to the scare on seeing the messenger than she was from doing the household work. She was more tired because of the messenger rather than doing the household work. Now see what conversation they both are having. "I thought they had come to arrest you," she said. She said to Dr. Sadao that the messenger had come to arrest him. That is what she thought. He gazed down into her anxious eyes. "I must get rid of this man for your sake," he said in distress. "Somehow I must get rid of him." Sadao looked carefully at Hannah's anxious eyes. He was very sad and distressed, and he said that he must get rid of the man for her sake, for Hannah's sake. He added that he had to get rid of the man by any means. Sadao goes to see the general now. This is the scene. And he went along with the messenger. "Of course," the general said weakly. "I understand fully. But that is because I once took a degree in Princeton. So few Japanese have." Sadao narrated the entire story to the general. The general, who was very weak, said that he understood Sadao's position because he had also studied in America at the Princeton University, but there were only a few Japanese who had studied in America. I care nothing for the man, Excellency, Sadao said. But having operated on him with such success. Yes, yes, the general said. It only makes me feel you more indispensable to me. Indispensable means necessary. Evidently, you can save anyone. You are so skilled. You say you think I can stand one more such attack as I have had today? Not more than one, Sadao said. Now, Sadao replied to the journal that he did not care for the American man, but as he had operated upon him successfully. The general interrupted him and said, Yes, yes. He felt that Sadao was a necessary part of his life. As Sadao had been successful at operating on the man, the general felt that Sadao was very skilled. The general asked that, did Sadao think that the general had any chance of surviving another heart attack as the one he had that day? Sadao replied that in his opinion, the general could not survive more than one such heart attack. Then certainly I can allow nothing to happen to you, the general said with anxiety. Now see how mean he was. He said, okay, if I cannot afford to have any other, one more heart attack, so definitely I will make sure that nothing should happen to you, because you are the one who will get me well. His long, pale Japanese face became expressionless, which meant that he was in deep thought. You cannot be arrested, the journal said, closing his eyes. Suppose you were condemned to death and the next day I had to have my operation? So mean of this. So mean of the general, right? Now see, the general said that then in that case he could not allow anything to happen to Sadao. He wanted to say that he needed Sadao and so he would protect him anyhow. The general's long, weak, yellowish face became expressionless because he was thinking about Sadao being arrested. वो सोच रहा था कि अगर डॉक्टर सदाओ अरेस्ट हो जाएंगे तो मेरा क्या होगा. He became serious, closed his eyes at the thought of Sadao being arrested and said that Sadao could not be arrested. Further, he said that if Sadao was sentenced to death and he needed an operation the next day, then who would operate upon him? So the general wanted to say that he needed Sadao and so he would protect him and he would not let anything happen to him. There are other surgeons, Excellency, Sadao suggested. None I trust, the general replied. The best ones have been trained by Germans and would consider the operation successful even if I died. I do not care for their point of view, he sighed. It seems a pity that we cannot better combine the German ruthlessness with the American sentimentality. Then you could turn your prisoner over to execution, and yet I could be sure you would not murder me while I was unconscious. The journal laughed. He had an unusual sense of humor. As a Japanese, could you not combine these two foreign elements? He asked. Ruthlessness means harshness. Sentimentality means being emotional. Execution means legal punishment. And peculiar means strange. Now see what they are talking in this paragraph. When the journal said that who will operate me if you will be in the prison, then how will I survive? So Sadao suggested to the general that there were many other surgeons in Japan. And general replied to that he did not trust anyone else other than Dr. Sadao. He added that the best surgeons had been trained by the Germans and for them the operation would be successful even if the general died. He did not care for their point of view. The general added that the Japanese could not combine the harsh nature of the Germans with the emotional nature of the Americans. So the general wanted to say that they did not have such persons who could combine the harsh nature of a German and the emotional nature of an American. He said that if they would have been able to do that, then Sadao could be harsh and could turn the prisoner to the Japanese and at the same time be emotional and not murder the general during the operation. With this, the general laughed. The writer says that general had a strange sense of humor. He was very witty. Then he asked Sadao that being Japanese, could he not combine these two foreign elements? So the foreign elements to which the general is referring is the harsh nature of the German and the emotional nature of an American, dear students. Okay? Now see, Sadao smiled. I am not quite sure, he said, but for your sake I would be willing to try, Excellency. He said, Sadao smiled first of all at the general's question, and then he said, I am not quite sure about it, but for your betterment, I am ready to try it. The general shook his head. I had rather not be the test case, he said. The general shook his head and he did not want to be such a person on whom a new trial would be made. He said, please do not experiment on me. He felt suddenly weak and overwhelmed with the cares of his life as an official in times such as these, when repeated victory brought great responsibilities all over the South Pacific. Overwhelmed means full of emotions. Care of his life, this phrase means problems and responsibilities that he faced during his life. South Pacific, dear students, is the part of the Pacific Ocean that lies in the southern hemisphere. So suddenly the general felt weak and emotional as he was reminded of the problems he had faced throughout his life while fulfilling his duties and responsibilities in various wars won by Japan. It is very unfortunate that this man should have washed up on your doorstep, he said irritably. I feel it so myself, Sadao said gently. So the general was irritated and said that the happening of the injured man reaching his house was an unfortunate one. Sadao also agreed with him. Now they are trying to find out some solution to this problem and see what is that. It would be best if he could be quietly killed, the general said. Not by you, but by someone who does not know him. I have my own private assassins. Assassins means professional killers. Suppose I send 2 of them to your house tonight, or better any night. You need know nothing about it. It is now warm. What would be more natural than that you should leave the outer partition of the white man's room open to the garden while he sleeps? So now see, they are having a planning in which general is telling the best solution to kill the man quietly. He told that he would not be killed by Dr. Sadao. He said to Dr. Sadao that no, you do not kill that American prisoner, but he will send his hired killers, professional killers, to kill him. He said he would send 2 killers to Sadao's house that night or any other night. And Sadao did not need to know about it. He said, you have to seem very natural, जैसे तुम्हें कुछ पता ही नहीं है. Sadao, he also said to Sadao that as the weather was warm those days, it was summer, it was warm during those days, he suggested Sadao to act naturally and keep the door of the outer partition of the man's room open. And if the man will ask now why you are opening it, so you can say it's warm. As it opened into the garden, it would give him easy access for those killers to kill the man while the man was asleep. So this was the planned solution given by the general to Dr. Sadao. Now see, certainly it would be very natural, Sadao agreed. In fact, it is so left open every night. They are talking about the partition, open partition which lead towards the garden. So Sadao agreed that the idea seemed quite natural, and he also said that they did leave the door of the outer partition open at night nowadays also. Good, the general said, yawning. They are very capable assassins. They make no noise and they know the trick of inward bleeding. If you like, I can even have them remove the body. The general was over with the talk and so he yawned to show disinterest now. यहाँ पे जो yawning वो कर रहा है वो disinterest दिखा रहा है उसका. He added that was a good thing. He commented that the killers were quite experts. They did not make any noise and killed the person in such a way that he bled inside. There would be no traces of blood on his body. He would even ask them to remove the dead body if Sadao wanted. Sadao considered that perhaps would be best, Excellency. He agreed, thinking of Hana. So Sadao thought about Hana and said that yes, that would be very good if they will dispose of the body also. He left the general's presence then and went home, thinking over the plan. In this way, the whole thing would be taken out of his hands. He would tell Hana nothing, since she would be timid at the idea of assassins in the house, and yet certainly such persons were essential in an absolute state such as Japan was. How else could rulers deal with those who opposed them? Timid means showing lack of courage. An absolute state means a state run by kings having total powers. Absolute state क्या होता है? A state where it was run by the kings, and kings they have all the powers in their hands. So Sadao went back home from the general's house, and on the way he kept on thinking of the plan that he had made along with the general. He thought that in this way he would not be involved in the death of that American man. He planned that he would not tell Hana anything about this plan because Hana would not like the idea of the hired killers coming to their house. But such persons were essential in a place like Japan. It was the only way for the rulers to deal with their opponents. He refused to allow anything but reason to be the atmosphere of his mind as he went into the room where the American was in bed. But as he opened the door, to his surprise, he found the young man out of bed and preparing to go into the garden. Reason word means here an idea backed by common sense. So Sadao did not let any thought enter his mind as he went into the room where the American man lay asleep. He was surprised to see the man out of his bed. He was getting ready to go out into the garden. That means he has regained some strength. What is this? He exclaimed. Who gave you permission to leave your room? Sadao was shocked as he asked him that who had permitted him to stand and walk. I am not used to waiting for permission, Tom said gaily. Gosh, I feel pretty good again, but will the muscles on this side always feel stiff? So Tom was happy and said that he was not in a habit of taking permission before doing anything. He said that he felt good again, just the muscles on the side of his body were stiff and rigid. And will it remain so? He asked Dr. Sadao about it. Okay? So I think it's enough for today. I'll see you with the remaining portion of the chapter in my next video. Till then, take very good care of yourself. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay positive, and stay happy. Bye-bye.